All right, hi everyone. Thanks for joining me today. So, unfortunately, I think this will be our last class for this session of essay writing. And today's lesson will just be, wrapping up loose ends. We've discussed the structure of a good essay, the structure of a good argument essay, and then we've also discussed ways to enhance your writing through literary devices and rhetorical strategies. And today is just going to be what are some common things that you should avoid or avoid making these mistakes in any essay? Honestly, it applies to everything. And it's just kind of tying up loose ends. And, it's just kind of like, I don't think any teacher really teaches these things to you. It's just something that like everyone just knows kind of not to do. But I don't know, maybe I know I wasn't aware of some of these rules. They're not really rules, but they're kind of unspoken rules in a way. It's like everyone knows like not to do them, but some of them kind of surprised me. So yeah. Okay, so the first rule, I actually never really heard of it until I learned this last year. You should always write out numbers under 10. So, you might just in any piece of writing, any essay, if you need to do a number, you just put the number. So if you say like ONE or TWO, but you're actually supposed to do that. It's in this, unspoken rules kind of book. It's actually yeah, but write out numbers under 10, but any number above 10, so 10 and above, so 10, 11, 12, blah, 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 you can just use the number keys, but you should really be writing out numbers under 10. It's kind of the unspoken rule about using numbers in
Saying
your
like so you're saying
essays.
like if we have like 10, we write TEN instead of 10.
No, for 10, you can write 1 0. It's just how write out numbers under 10.
But don't. Right. So for one you would just do zero or not zero or ONE, right?
Yeah,
Okay, okay.
basically. All right, so the next kind of rule, I don't know if I should call them rules, but dates. I don't know how often you're going to use dates in a piece of writing, but I have had to write for an assignment a letter. And of course, you need a date, a letter kind of thing. So dates written like this, so September 12th, 2018, do not need a comma. So you can see here, September 12th, it includes the TH after 12. So that does not need a comma, but dates written like this, September 12th, just with no TH, just 12, 2018 do need a comma. So if you don't do the TH, so like if you say September 1st, the ST, you're fine, you don't need a comma, but if you don't use first, you just say 1, September 1, or you don't really say September 1, but in writing, some people do prefer to use just the number and not the kind of ending two letters there. And that's when you do need a comma. So we kind of discussed this in our second lesson with transitions, but I just kind of want a refresher. So you do not begin or end a paragraph with a quote. So you should never do that because you need to explain your quote. So putting it at the last sentence of your body paragraph, of course, does not work because then you don't have any, room to explain what the quote means. You need your own commentary in there, and you don't begin a paragraph with a quote because paragraph always starts with your topic sentence, which is very important. And you do not list quotes, so every quote is framed by your own commentary. So if you have like a quote from maybe a book, you need to have the sentence before that quote. It needs to be your own words. You can't put quotes after quote after quote without any of your own commentary. It's like kind of a sandwich and the quote is in the middle. You do not introduce or follow a quote with, in this example, this proves or this quote shows, these last two quotations. I mean, you can do it, but it's just not, I don't recommend it because it sounds kind of just like it's okay, it gets the point across, but it's very unoriginal. You don't actually have to say this quote shows, you can just state what you think you should be arguing or something. You don't need to say in this example or this quote shows. That's just, it's not necessary because of course the reader will know that the quote is showing something. So you don't need to kind of state it again. It's kind of redundant. And the quoted text should read fluently within your thoughts. So never refer to an author by his or her first name because they're obviously not your friends. So use Wiesel or Carter, etc. So whatever the last name of the author is. This sounds pretty, basic and self-explanatory, but you don't know how many times I've seen it. I've even made that mistake once. But this does not apply when you're referring the author as the main character in a book. So let's say um, I use Carter as in Jimmy Carter, which was one of our former presidents. So if Jimmy Carter wrote a book and he was the main character, it was kind of like a autobiography or a book based on his life. If he wrote a book like that, you could refer to him as Jimmy because he's a character in the book. He is the author, but he's also a character. So with characters, you can always use their first name, but the actual author of the book, you should not call them Jimmy. So if you need to change the text when you quote, so if you get a quote from, a book or an article that you want to use as evidence, you can actually change it, with quotes. You learn that you have to do it word for word, of course, because you're quoting someone, that those are their exact words, not yours. But you can actually change it to meet, standard grammar, usage, or capitalization requirements. But to do so, you have to use brackets. So this example, Smith writes in his autobiography, I seldom smoke in French class. When I did, I usually just say je ne sais pas, which is I don't know. And this person bracketed I don't know because his audience might not know what this French phrase is. So this person wanted to make it clear, and you can do that, but just remember with brackets, those are changes to the original text. Brackets are kind of used more often in capitalization requirements. So if you're saying something and you and you find a quote and the first word is capitalized, but you don't want it to be capitalized because it doesn't fit within your own sentence, then you can change it. So this is not a good example because we can't really uncapitalize Smith because that's a proper noun. But let's say it's like a when. So here you can say something before and you can't really have a capital letter that's not a proper noun in the middle of a sentence. So what people do, well, they will put a bracket around the W and make it lowercase. So the brackets always mean that it's a change in the original text, and you unfortunately have to do that because it's not your original quote, not your original saying. So it's not up to you to decide whether or not you can just change it however you want. So yeah. So a compound sentence is a sentence that has at least two independent clauses joined by a conjunction. An independent clause is a clause that has a subject and verb and forms a complete thought. So an example of a compound sentence would be, this house is too expensive. So there's the comma, and then and is a conjunction. Conjunctions are just joining words. They're just I don't know if you ever heard that. I think it's Schoolhouse Rock, the conjunction song. It's super catchy. I learned, and while I was learning about compound sentences, I learned that conjunctions like fanboys, conjunctions are for and nor, but, or, yet, and so. And you can use any of those to link to independent clauses. So independent clause is this house is too expensive. That's a complete thought. And that house is too small is also a complete sentence. And it's just joined by a comma and a conjunction. And you always want to punctuate it with a comma before the conjunction. So always make sure the comma goes before the conjunction. So the conjunction is and, comma goes before it. And the reason I kind of put this there is I see a lot of things. So here it says conjunctions are joining words, which is why you should never begin a sentence with one because it is not joining anything. So I've seen many instances where people use one of the fanboys conjunctions to start a sentence. Like I think the most common ones are and, but, and so. And you really, it's not grammatically proper to put them at the beginning of a sentence, but it just kind of, I felt the urge to do it before because it just sounds right in a sentence, but I would try your best to avoid that because it's not proper grammar and it just, yeah, it doesn't fit the grammar handbook. So I would avoid starting a sentence with one. So of course, details matter. Always pay attention to capitalization and use it properly in titles. So titles of articles, titles of books, and proper nouns like names, places, proper things. And always remember to proofread multiple times. You don't know how many times where I've written something and I've looked over it and there's just so many spelling errors. It's kind of easier these days because I think most people write in Google Docs, their essays in Google Docs, and that kind of catches grammatical errors and spelling mistakes. But there's been a lot of times where it actually doesn't catch a lot of things, and I kind of have to go through it myself and pick out things. You can always put it in Grammarly, I guess. That's how some people I know proofread, but to be honest, Grammarly isn't that great to be honest, in my opinion, and sometimes it doesn't even catch some things that it should. So just a way to proofread is to read out everything. So make sure it makes sense when you say it because I think that's the an easiest way to catch something if you say it to yourself. You can also have other people proofread. I just think proofreading and revision is just so important in the writing process that a lot of people kind of just ignore. Like they just kind of write their essay and they're like, okay, I'm done. I'll just turn this in. It sounds like a lot of people like do it, but I know a ton of people who like just don't proofread and they just hand in whatever they got, and then they have like just small little grammar mechanics mistakes, and it can be totally avoidable. But you just got to take that extra step and that extra time to proofread. So you don't need to italicize, and if you guys don't know what italicizing means, it's when you kind of apply the feature in Google Docs or Word or whatever you're using to write, and it makes the words like slanted, a little bit slanted. That's italicizing. You don't need to italicize text you take from a piece unless it's already italicized in the text. So you don't have to if it's a book and you're writing a book report and you want to use a book quote, you don't need to italicize it. I think people always think that they have to because it's like a quote, common misconception. But if it's italicized in the book, you need to italicize it. The quotes already indicate it's taken material from another source. However, you always have to italicize, titles of books and articles. So let's say the book is the Catcher in the Rye. You either have to italicize that title or I've seen people underline it. So either italicize or underline the name of or titles of books or articles. That's when you're actually supposed to italicize. So questions make a response colloquial, which colloquial, if you don't know, it means like not formal. Like the way you talk to your parents or your siblings or your friends, that's colloquial. The opposite of colloquial would be formal. So if you were talking to like your boss, your teacher, principal, just coach, like just someone in a higher position than you, then you would be much more formal and to them. So if you have a super formal response, like a super formal essay you're writing, avoid questions unless they're specifically for a rhetorical effect. But just basic questions, you should just kind of avoid them. So this is kind of a throwback to our past lessons too. You connect paragraphs smoothly and clearly. You should not rely on phrases such as another or also or a second example. There's a word, phrase, or idea that links the last sentence of one body paragraph to the topic sentence of the next paragraph. And if you need a refresh on that, you can always go back to our second lesson, which is on classroom. And then don't begin your conclusion with in conclusion. It's just, it works, but it's very basic. Everyone uses it. I don't recommend it because you want your essay, no matter how, like, no matter what you're writing it for, you want it to be good, of course. It doesn't matter if it's for college, school, just a kind of informal one to a teacher, or just for fun. I don't know if you really want to write an essay for fun, but you want to make sure it's good, of course. And a way to make it good is to make it unique. You want your essay to be different from everyone else's. So you don't want to use these phrases that everyone else uses, of course, because that doesn't make you stand out. And you want to use things that you know are different and unique and what other people should not be able to replicate. Like if you come up with your own transitions, that you can't really have another person come up with the same one. Like it's very hard to be kind of uniform with other people if you don't use like these phrases. Like another, also a second example. So yeah. Okay, do not end sentences with a preposition, and prepositions are words that show a location or position. So like under, above, by, away, towards, they're just kind of words that show where something or someone is. And do not end sentences with a word because they create prepositional phrases that end in nouns, and that's something you kind of want to avoid. It's kind of hard to do so though, so just kind of beware because this is also thing in like the grammar handbook that you should avoid. So you don't need a comma after one prepositional phrase that begins a sentence. So if your prepositional phrase is something like, the book is under the table. So under is your prepositional and preposition, and that whole kind of sentence is your phrase. You don't need a comma for that, but after 3 prepositional phrases, that is when the rule of thumb is applied. So in the grammar handbook, after 3 prepositional phrases in a row, that's when a comma is necessary. Yeah, it's kind of weird and confusing, but that's just how the English language works. So capitalization, you might think it's simple, but there's actually a lot of things that should be uncapitalized, but you think it's supposed to be capitalized. There's a lot of leeway. So names of school subjects such as, math, algebra, geology, psychology should not be capitalized with the exception of names of languages. So, French, English, Spanish, German, those are all capitalized. But names of courses, like actual specific courses, are capitalized. So an example would be Algebra 201, Math 001. Those are actually, well, I'm not sure if these examples are actual high school or college courses, but every course, in high school or college, they have like a name. You might just call it algebra, but it has like a specific number after it. I think it varies from school to school, but these names of specific courses are capitalized because they are a specific thing, so they're kind of like a proper noun. But just basic, universal names of school subjects. So everyone calls it math. They don't call it math 001. They just call it math. Those are all lowercase, no capitalization. So the words mom and dad and, grandma and grandpa, etc., should be capitalized when they are used as a proper noun in place of their given name. So for example, you see mom went to Europe with dad. So those are capitalized because you're replacing, instead of saying like your mom's name or your dad's name, you're replacing it with a proper noun in place of it. But you would not capitalize it if you are just referring to your parents. So if you said my mom and dad went to Europe, you wouldn't be capitalizing it. the difference between these two is that you're not using my. So you're not, in this example, you're just saying, oh, mom went to Europe with dad, but it's not the same thing as my mom. You know, my mom and dad went to Europe. That's the difference between that. So seasons such as winter, spring, summer, and fall, they don't need capitalization because they are generic nouns. They're not quite actually proper nouns. Some people may confuse these words as being proper nouns and try to capitalize them using that rule of capitalization, but it should not be capitalized. So example, the winter season allows for many snow-related sports. As you can tell, the winter is all lowercase. It does not need capitalization because it's generic nouns. It's just something that's not considered proper. So there's also something called parallelism. So in grammar, parallelism, it's also known as parallel structure, parallel construction. You can kind of call it either any of those three. It's a balance within one or more sentences of similar phrases or clauses that have the same grammatical structure. The application of parallelism affects readability and may make text easier to process. Parallelism, we didn't discuss it in our rhetorical, devices and strategies class, but it can be also used as a rhetorical strategy. I'll show you some examples in the next slide, but they can be very effective and can really speak to the reader. So this is what I kind of mean. So I'm just going to read the sentence and you'll probably immediately notice something wrong with it. So first one, the student must understand their role in the class. So you can see the student, which is the noun, the noun of the sentence, and then you have the kind of now other noun that describes the student, but it's underlined because that's an error in parallelism. That doesn't work. Parallelism is where like the everything in the sentence, like the past tense, present tense, like all the tenses are the same. So here you're referring to one student. You're saying the student. So that's one student. It doesn't say the students. It just says the student. So one student, but it says there, and there is used to describe, multiple. It's plural. That's a
I think
plural tense.
I think a lot of people confuse that because like if you're writing about somebody and you don't necessarily tell somebody their gender, so you're confused as to what to say there because like you say is a student if the student was a boy you could say his, but like if they didn't, if like you're quoting someone, like if you're writing about something and like the gender isn't provided, so you kind of are confused a bit.
Yeah, I can see how that can be confused for some people, but yeah, you never want to kind of automatically assume someone's gender. But if you ever see something like this in a standardized test, such as like the SAT or an AP test, which maybe you'll get to when you guys are older, but they'll always give you a choice. So in this sentence, you can have either. You can have his or her. The student must understand his role in the class, student must understand her role in the class, but the SAT or whatever, it's probably going to be multiple choice. They'll never put both his or her as a separate answer choices because then there can be two correct answers, but there can't be two correct answers. So just remember the one that means a singular kind of tense, so his or her, that's either one of those is going to be right. But since there's plural, that is not correct. And at yeah, these days, there is becoming more and more common as a pronoun for people who don't want to maybe identify with a gender, but unfortunately, in the grammar book and the official SAT grammar book, they're always going to say his or her is correct. And unfortunately, like they're just going to put something in the answer choices. Their answer choices might be like this, there, and then maybe A is there and B is his, and C is there but spelled THERE, and then the last choice might be like it's, but the only correct choice in the context is B. So yeah. All right, let's look at the second one. I like writing and reading, but not to present. So you might notice that that sentence sounds kind of clunky, and it's because the parallel structure is off. Like it's not the same tense. So here it's highlighted, bolded in blue. So I like writing, it ends in ing. So that's kind of a present tense thing. Like I currently like writing and reading, but then not to present.
That's like
Mm,
the future tense, right? Kind of.
yeah, kind
So
of.
you would put like presenting.
Mm-hmm. So to fix the sentence to make it more grammatically correct in parallelism, it'd be I like writing and reading, but not presenting. As you notice, they're all the same tense, they're all the same, the parallel structure is correct now. It doesn't sound clunky or awkward, it just sounds pretty smooth and flowy, and yeah. Let's look at the third one. I'm a poor student because I wait until the last minute to study, complete my work in a careless manner, and my motivation is low. The thing with this one is, so these are verbs, the ones highlighted in blue. Wait is a verb, complete is a verb, and this person uses them as verbs. But then in the last sentence, they say, my motivation is low, and motivation is a noun, it's not a verb. So if you have two verbs in a sentence, you kind of have to have a third verb in there because they say, because I wait until the last minute to study, comma, complete my work in a careless manner. And then the last part of that sentence after the comma, it's kind of like the unspoken rule. You kind of need to have the same kind of, if you have like only two verbs, that doesn't really work. The sentence doesn't sound like horrible, like the second one really did, but it is actually grammatically incorrect because they don't use a third verb. So to fix it, they might say something like, um, complete my work in a careless manner and I don't even know, and and I don't motivate myself to do my homework. You know, like you can obviously turn motivation into a verb and that's motivate, or you can like scrap it and do a complete new verb or a complete new part of the sentence. You can't kind of just like throw a noun in there. There's no verb in that last part of the sentence. They're just saying my motivation is low. But like what about your motivation? Like you don't what's the verb? Like what is your motivation doing? You're just saying it's low. So those are all kind of errors in parallelism. So you always kind of want to make sure everything is consistent in the same tense. So yeah. So this is also kind of a throwback from our previous classes. So I just kind of wanted to review it because I felt like I didn't explain it super well, and I just kind of want to give more examples. So close with a callback to your introductory sentence, and you close with a callback in your conclusion sentence, should be the last um, sentence in your conclusion. So the callback is actually a stand-up comedy term that's used in stand-up comedy, and it means to refer to an earlier joke that got a laugh. So what some comedians will do is that if they tell a joke and people laugh at it, they kind of want to bring it back because it made people laugh. So maybe if they bring it up again, they'll laugh more and make the performance more memorable, which gets them more laughs. And of course, that's what any comedian would want. So a callback in an essay context or a speech context refers back to something that will connect emotionally with the audience. If you mastered the hook, which is the first sentence of your introduction, it should be pretty easy to create a callback to your introductory sentence to connect with your audience and to connect to the world at large, which sounds super complicated, but really it's not. It's not super complicated once you kind of get the hang of it. So here are some kind of examples. So on the left, I have the introductory sentence, so a hook, and then for the ending sentence, this is the callback or the final sentence of the essay. So these kind of work for any kind of essay. Um, there's really no prompt. I just kind of wanted you guys to see how everything kind of relates, how like these two things directly connect with each other. But if you remember, a good hook like shouldn't state the theme or the prompt of your essay. The goal is to, say your hook and then kind of build up to it in your introduction paragraph, and then build up to your thesis. And the way you connect it is what makes a really good essay. So you might notice also like the introductory sentence can kind of be for any essay prompt. It just depends on how you connect it to what your prompt is, which can be anything, honestly. And the ending sentence is basically kind of a second hook because it's supposed to be related and connected to your hook. So ending sentence can be for any prompt too. So I kind of wanted you guys to know that. So let's just kind of read them. So to flip a burger and to approve a constitutional bill are two very different things. And then they might end it as that can make all the difference between who flips a burger and who leads a country. So you can see they say that flips a burger and leads a country, which is kind of when you think of leads a country, you think of the president, and the president, approves constitutional bills, and that's what the whole government does. So, it's a direct callback to the first sentence. Yeah, and it's kind of hard to do because you have to manage to, it's kind of like a pyramid. So you kind of start off with the sentence and then you build up to your thesis and then you say all your evidence and your body paragraphs. And then you kind of have to, in your conclusion, you have to kind of trickle down again to make it back to your hook. So just think of it as kind of like a giant pyramid or a giant hill. You have to build up and then you have to come back down, back to your hook. That's how it works. I also wanted you guys to see in this introductory sentence, this person uses very parallel structure very good. So they say to flip a burger and to approve a constitutional bill. So to flip and to approve, that's very good. If they just said to flip a burger and approve a constitutional bill, that's actually not grammatically correct. When they say to flip, they have to, and the next noun, so flip and approve are nouns. So you always have to have a common term. So to flip, to approve. So that's an example of parallel structure right there. You can kind of see it anywhere. So let's go to the second one. The world is full of prime motivators, so these ambitious individuals are continually seeking a way to gain a competitive edge. So this person might ended it with, this is the competitive edge that my rivals have been in pursuit of, which leaves them in the dust of my wake. So kind of competitive edge, I think this person was talking about themselves as this person is saying that they have the competitive edge that that beats all these ambitious individuals, even though like there's so many like good people in the world. Like this is how this person uses their skills and assets to gain that competitive edge over other people. But of course, I'm not really sure what the prompt was. And then sometimes I think my sanity is having tea with the Mad Hatter. And that's an Alice in Wonderland reference. So ending sentence might be, Alice was able to navigate all of Wonderland with her own brain. Therefore, you can navigate through all the enigmas and decisions that are thrown at you in life. This person actually used they kind of compared their life or like, all the mysteries and decisions that are thrown at you in the course of your life. They're kind of comparing it to a fictional kind of story, which is kind of cool. So it just shows you can start it off with anything. Anything works if you do it right and you do it well. So last one is, I have an obsession. Not with anything you see in reality TV, like eating the walls of my house. Yes, that was a real episode of My Strange Addiction, but with my grades. So if that's their kind of introduction, then they might end it with, although I'm not on a TV show, I will conquer my obsession by applying skills from something as simple as English class to my educational career as a whole. So you see, often with like callbacks and hooks, since you have to connect them, you kind of spot like a common word. So here it's to flip a burger, and it says flips a burger, and constitutional bill and leads a country are kind of similar, but they don't have to be like the same wording. You see competitive edge, Mad Hatter, and then Alice in Wonderland, which are all like kind of the same thing, even though it's not the same wording exactly. And then obsession, obsession, TV show, reality TV. You don't have to like directly state you don't have to like repeat the words like exactly. You can kind of paraphrase them or change them up, but that's a lot of people just kind of repeat certain words from their hook because it obviously shows a callback. But it's your choice. You can paraphrase or kind of take words directly. It's really your choice, but there's just so many different ways to do it, and those are just some ways how. So here are some additional examples of hooks, I guess. So I always love reading hooks. I always love, thinking of them because, they're so interesting because you can take anything and make it into a great hook or a great essay. So I'll just read some of them. Stress is a serial killer. That's kind of very blunt as a first sentence, when people think of serial killers, that's not typically a good thing. I don't know. This one makes me very curious. I'm not sure what they were trying to go for. And that's, well, of course, what you want. What you want as an author to make your reader super curious. This is a these kind of are all examples of literary kind of strategies. So I believe that I have been a bell tower, chiming in when the time is right. So a bell tower chimes. So they're saying they have been a bell tower. So that's kind of like a metaphor. They're comparing themselves to a bell tower, but then they're kind of also using like personification in a way because bell towers chime, like the bells chime. So it's kind of like a two in one there. And then here's a simile: receiving 100% without asking a question is like putting toothpaste back in the tube. So things like, that's like a simile. They're comparing, um, if you don't ask questions, but you still get 100% without like, ever having any curiosity or asking a question, it's like putting toothpaste back in the tube, which is just super unsatisfying and it's messy and it's just not something you like to do. Here's another one. Homework is like emptying the dishwasher, easy to do as long as you take the time to do it. So the like, that's a simile. Here's a meta, it's actually simile because it uses as. Of course, there have been a few days where I felt as lively as a sloth in a body cast, which is an interesting comparison. But you can kind of see additional examples of hooks if you want to go back to it. And yeah, that's the end of this class, today's class and this course. So thank you everyone who's made it a great few weeks. I really enjoyed teaching this class and I hope you guys have learned something, anything. Feel free to contact me anytime if you have something just random you want me to read or just someone you want, something you want feedback on. I'm always happy to do it and hopefully I'll hear from you guys one day. Don't know when that'll be, but yeah. So thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.